Everybody, and welcome to Keep Warm Together, the podcast that talks about the process of making games and the making of scavengers. Today I have with me Wix and French. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Why don't you tell the audience your full name and what you do here at Midwinter?
My name is Chris French. I work mostly on AI, but set up encounters as well and add some fun to the levels.
Fun adder.
Fun is good to have.
Yeah.
It is good.
Especially level 3.
Yeah, we've tightened up.
Yeah. We have. And Wix?
My name is Daniel Wiksten. I'm Swedish, so that's why the name sounds weird to pronounce, I guess. I go by Wix because there's so many Dans around everywhere, especially here too.
Yeah, there's a lot of dance in the world in general.
I know. That's why I want to be unique.
You are. Oh, you're the most unique person.
I'm unique, just like everyone else.
Am I not unique?
No, French isn't unique. Yeah, it's one or the other. We're going to start with Wix, and I want to talk about weapons for a minute.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about working on weapons, getting started, do you have other games? Do you have other movies? What inspires you to work on a weapon and get started in general?
Well, it's mainly actually gameplay. Or if you're thinking about from the artistic side of what it looks like, that's a different thing. But most of the times it's actually getting the gameplay to a point where you can have players solve problems in different ways. So, for instance, a shotgun is a very specific weapon. It's for up close, not very accurate kind of play, whereas a sniper rifle is completely the opposite of that. So it's more about filling gameplay roles for me rather than, obviously if you make space guns, then
It's a space gun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you have a whole different process of what is this thing and where's it coming from and how does it work, and it's completely different.
That's an interesting perspective. I didn't think of it that way. You're thinking about how do we make this a function of the game and what are the things that it's going to do.
Right, exactly.
Not it's a cool gun because it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, every time you make a game, you want to start with a weapon list of what type of weapons do you want in. And most of the times you go with type. You don't even think about what it is. It's we need a close range weapon, we need a melee weapon, we need a long range weapon, we need a high fire rate weapon, and that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And then from there you kind of go and, what does the weapon look like, and how does it behave, and which kind of skill level does it cater to, and that kind of stuff.
And do you think of, when you think of weapons, obviously this game Scavenger we're working on has a very specific look and feel and world that everything exists in. So the weapons are going to be a certain way because they're kind of put together and, how they are. Do you think of that as well as part of that kind of thought process?
Yes. I mean, we have certain types of factions, which is the weapon comes from a certain background. You have the in-world weapons that the Outlanders make, for instance. I want them to have a different feel, to feel more rickety and unreliable and a little bit harder to manage. And mainly how I do that is through weapon handling. But we have talked about some other mechanics as well that we may or may not put into the game. We'll see how it actually pans out. But in terms of weapon handling, I certainly want them to have a different feel depending on where they come from as well.
So, Wix, let's talk about balancing then.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about these different kind of gameplay mechanics the weapons are trying to achieve, how hard is balancing?
Oh, well, totally depends on the game. A lot of us come from Halo, and then balancing is extremely important, and it's more for a competitive type of game, where the balance has to be super tight. Otherwise you can't have competitions where people win millions of dollars and stuff like that. So that's a whole different thing than this, where we have more of a kind of an in-session progression thing happening, and that's more where the balance is a bit trickier. If you're a fully decked out character, you don't expect to be as competitive going up against someone that has just a bow and arrow, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's a different kind of problem for balancing. But yeah, normally it's a very math intensive and a lot of black magic kind of feel to it as well.
And a lot of trial and error, I'm guessing.
A lot of trial and error,
playtests,
and you'll get feedback from people ooh, this thing is so overpowered, and then someone else saying it sucks in the same kind of playtest.
Right.
Depending on how people play it, and also different skill levels and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think in general, games in general, you're making it for everybody, and you're making it for different types of people and how they play, which is totally different.
Yeah, and that's another thing when you think about making making weapons for a game, you kind of want to make sure that there are some weapons that are a bit more forgiving when it comes to skill and precise aim and twitch skills and stuff like that. That's why shotguns and SMGs and stuff like that are really good for that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more forgiving where you spray and pray and you can do well without missing the super critical shot, and then
Right.
you are toast.
Or melee, like we have melee.
Melee weapons is also,
Yeah, it's my favorite thing to play. I've already said that in the podcast. You all know that.
Mm-hmm.
I play as Jay all the time, and we'll have other characters that focus on that kind of melee stuff as well. But for me, I just love playing on a controller, playing melee, and our game lets us do that. Like, our game lets us have a person who's really focusing on long range shooting and also close range shooting, but also melee, and I think that's great.
Yeah, and I mean, we have so many different kind of settings where you fight in. Like, you will snipe dudes from super far away if you have the weapon for it, obviously, or you just run in, all of you, and like just bash them in with your clubs.
Yeah.
Because you want to conserve ammo or something like that. Even if you have the rifle.
Yeah, I love melee because there's no ammo. It's just my favorite part of it.
No reload.
Yeah, no, the reload is just pulling your arm back again. French, let's talk about AI for a minute. Kind of the same question that I had for Wix, where do you look for inspiration, like when developing routines, like AI patterns, stuff like that?
More so, like, because I came from a Halo background, where it was a campaign and it was like a one-time through, and you really had to make a really crafted experience one time through. Versus now, it's we need to experience that last 6-8 months, a year, where people are fighting kind of the same guys over and over again. It's a kind of a different mindset that I've had to switch myself into, where I have to put really kind of difficult combat puzzles in front of people, and then be like, well, yeah, you're gonna get murdered the first few times, but like 6 months down the road or a month down the road, as you increase in skill, it'll become normal and it won't become a big deal. But
right.
I have to play the down the road card a lot more than I have done before. So it's an interesting challenge.
And before then, you were working on that kind of narrative experience.
Yeah,
and
narrative experience, like, most likely a player will play one time through, so they'll kind of learn it and that'll be it. But versus like, well, this needs to last a little bit longer.
Isn't a big difference also when you make like a campaign and a narrative thing, you have a directionality to an encounter.
Yeah.
You come in from one direction and you think about what the player's going to see when he comes from there, and like as he pushes in, it's going to see.
I come in this way, I'm going to exit this way, so we know how to set up the thing. There's a lot of 360.
You don't know where they're coming from.
There's 360 in this,
and
then so there's a lot of challenges of just making them work correctly from any direction, and like making them feel smart in any direction as well.
At the same time, that's some of my favorite stuff when I play video games, is those worlds, the overly used open world kind of description. But it is that kind of, what you said, 360 angle of looking at these characters, these NPCs, and figuring out where the AI should do from all different angles.
Yeah, you just want to set up, here's what they can do, here's the combat puzzle, and let the player figure things out, let them try different things. Like, I'm not going to know everything they can possibly do, all the configurations they can do, and try to get through this puzzle. It's awesome to let people kind of figure out and get through the puzzle itself. So.
And then we see characters do things, or players do things that we didn't expect, and then seeing what that outcome is. Some of the coolest things that I've seen so far is how the AIs react to each other, and some of the stuff is coming out finally on this podcast or in videos soon. But I think we talk a little bit about that, where, like, we have wolves and they'll attack Outlanders, and we get to watch that experience happen.
Yeah, three-way fights are awesome because it makes the world feel more alive, that they're reacting to each other and stuff, and the player can like sit back and watch and see, they're actually engaging with each other, and there's factions that fight each other, and that just adds more to the choice for the player to, like, do I engage now? Do I let them kind of fight it out, or do I slip by them all when they're all fighting? So it gives up more tactical options for the player,
and
more chaos of, like, we don't know how we're the roll of the dice, and we don't know how that's actually going to play out. We're not predetermining how that plays out. That's just what's happening in the world at that point.
Yeah, I've seen a bear just take over an Outlander camp, and you're like, okay, well, that's the bear's camp now.
Yeah.
Like, he gets
even worse when there's multiple bears and they just, like, clear out who you think you were fighting, and all of a sudden you're fighting bears.
You're fighting bears, that might be a common occurrence in the game. Now, is that what kind of challenges does that present when you're building, AI that interact with each other?
We try to make them follow the kind of the same rule set, so it's just follow the kind of the same rules. I'm on this team, they're on this team, and let them go through the same process of like whether it's a player or another NPC, they'll go through the same targeting sequence and get the best target for them, and they'll just fight it out.
Yeah. Wix, is there something you're working on right now that's kind of like you can talk about that's really interesting that you can talk about when it comes to scavengers?
Are we allowed to talk about the armor system?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to mention it. May not go into super big specifics, but one of the things that we just redesigned. So I'm not here in Kirkland all the time. So one of the things I try to focus on while I'm here is actually talking a lot with people about what overarching changes to the game and trying to nail that down so we can make the changes whenever it's appropriate. And one of the things that came up is that the armor system has been kind of like it felt a little bit bland. It felt like just additional health. It didn't really have a depth to it. And we have actually just a few hours ago submitted a change for that to make it a bit more interesting. And Chris is a perfect person to talk about this as well, because it changes how he is able to make encounters have hard counters, so to say. Like if you don't have a firearm, you might not do anything against a fully armored character, an outlander. Whereas before it would just like take more arrows.
Right.
And now we've changed it so that like it's a bigger difference. Like if someone's armored and you have weak weapons, you can't just punch a guy to death with your fist. Like nothing is going to happen. So you need to there are more hard stops. Like you need to get a firearm to deal with this guy.
A corresponding weapon for a corresponding armor, particularly.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, type stuff. And I've seen that in games, and I really like that experience because again, it kind of allows the creators and developers to make these different scenarios where you're really kind of leading the player to where you want them to go or have the experience that you want them to have, right?
Yeah, also that, and it creates more interesting team play for everyone that's working together. Like you could have one character that has a grenade that is shredding armor on the guys that are in the blast, and all of a sudden he has no armor, and now Chris with his bow can just shoot him. And that opens up the door for everyone else to pour on him. But you need to have a key to deal with it, otherwise you're going to have a hard time.
Right.
So you need to figure out a way for your team to do that together instead of just like.
Want to have a lot more of like instead of just one weapon. Oh, I've made the best weapon and that does everything perfectly for every situation. There's more like I might need a weapon switch at times because this one shreds health more than armor, or armor more than health. So we'll have a little more weapon switching and a little more variation. Maybe I need to keep this weapon around in my inventory a while longer because I might need it if a certain situation comes up. Yeah,
you're gonna like this too, Carlos. We talked about making we have different types of melee weapons, but they don't really have that much of a difference now. But with our new armor system, we can make some that are, the spiked bat can just penetrate more armor. And
but the axe does more bleeding, so you're gonna have instead of just doing the same thing. They're gonna actually do different things. Like if they have no armor, you can do bleeds on people, but that the blades will do more of the bleeding, but they won't do anything versus the armor.
Yeah, again, this is in the weeds, and we can't say too much more, but there is some sort of type axe weapon, and I love how it looks. But then right now, currently, because this is a development podcast, it's the same as
they're basically the same.
Yeah, but it looks super cool. Yeah. So if it changes its properties,
different properties.
That's really cool.
Weapons,
kind of the same way as making the Outlander weapons feel and behave different or having different use than the crafted weapons. We want to do the same thing like within the weapon types.
Yeah.
To have them have different use cases.
I dig it. French, you have one more thing that you can tell us maybe that you're working on that super new stuff?
I was working on a sentry turret guy, a guy in a turret that will kind of just like guard lanes and a heavy duty. Like you have to take him out. You can get around to the side of him.
And you can use his turret afterwards?
I knew that was going to come up. Oh, man.
I just feel like it's the normal game thing now. I'm like, I got to get to that turret so I can use that turret.
Currently, we can't.
No. It conveniently breaks when you get there. You're like, I don't know.
It's kind of this like Outlander. He's got two machine guns that are just tied to this post, so they'll break off. You'll get the guns.
Well, you'll
get the guns.
Logical.
That's cool, right?
That's fine.
Or parts.
Yeah, the guns and the parts.
Well, you'll get nothing. Carlos, you get nothing.
when you have turrets, that's kind of the first thing that comes to
I know,
players.
it's funny. Yeah.
So currently we don't. We just got it working, so we'll have to see down the line.
Let's be unique, you know? Yeah. Let's not do what everybody else is doing. We're already doing that in a bunch of ways.
Would you rather have the weapon you can move around with? Because it's usually guarding a spot you don't need anymore, right?
Well, lots of times games do that, where it's it's essentially a heavy gun at that point, and you just pick it up, and it's it's a rail gun that's crazy.
You don't want to use it in that spot anymore anyways.
No. Let's move on to questions from the community, which is, oh my goodness, I put this out, and in like 10 minutes I had so many questions.
Uh-oh.
Our community is so awesome, is all I'm saying. First one is from Twitter, Lilo Diman. I'm bad at these. Come on. How many weapon variations will there be, and will new content be added frequently after the game is released?
Oh, that's...
Anything we can't answer, we can't answer.
Yeah, that's a tricky question to answer, because there's going to be a multitude of base weapons. There's going to be variations on top of those, and there's also going to be outliner weapons and weapons that you found in the world. And I can't really give you a number, unfortunately, but enough. And yes, we will add more things as we go. That's absolutely the plan. Mm-hmm. The base set of nice variation available on release, but we plan on making more cool stuff.
More cool stuff on the way. From Twitter, Astronautic says, how is the gunplay system compared to other games? Well, we kind of went into that a little bit.
Yes. Well, I mean...
Or no, we didn't really.
We didn't really get into the gunplay. We talked about how we make the gun design and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, let's put it like this. A big part of the studio comes from making Halo. We have fairly good knowledge of how to make things like a shooter that feels good on a controller. We've just we're working on that more now, later in our development process. But yeah, it's gonna feel good. I mean, that's the intent. We focus more on not super long range, because we want people to move closer into engagements as much, but we'll have those as well. It'll be a little bit more limited. But yeah, I mean, gunplay is gunplay, and we make you feel good.
We make you feel good. That's a box quote.
Yeah.
Scavengers, we make you feel good. From Anhanga on Discord, what's the biggest challenge been so far on coding PvE AI? And then they put in parentheses Scourge, so they know the Scourge already. Biggest challenge.
The biggest challenge has been probably just nav mesh and the size of the world, and like a lot of the bugs come down to, now the storm is now causing nav mesh issues, and then the guys are skipping across the ground because...
Oh, so the terrain, essentially.
The size of the world.
Basically like the thing we use for AI to be able to move around and find their way around, pathfinding stuff.
Right.
Yeah. For the most part, the Scourge are zombie-like creatures, and that's a fairly well-known kind of how we make them work. But the Outlanders, that's more of a challenge from like the 360 perspective. Like, how do you get these guys reacting and feeling smart when you're coming up behind, when you're not, like, there's a balance between how well they see you in the environment versus the player wants to feel like they're sneaking up on them, but not too dumb. So and they need to be challenging. So there's a lot of challenges with the Outlanders themselves to make them feel good in a space that isn't. We're not making a game where you just see AI and you wipe them out and you move on. It's like they're a definite challenge to winning the match. You can't just ignore them. If you go out in the middle of an encounter, you will lose because you're not going in there strategically. You need to use the tools you're given to kind of defeat these puzzles that we're putting out there for you. You can't, So it's
like a couple different things for different types of AI, obviously. Yeah. From Twitter, Fuzzle HC asks, what are the challenges when making enemies feel smart? We're talking about this. Mm-hmm. Health, flanking, dodging, interaction. We kind of answered that.
We can answer. A lot of what I try to do is, like, you can never make an AI fully smart, and players say they want them smart, but they really want the challenge, and they want to infer smartness and intelligence on the player. I want players to kind of fill in the gaps as much as possible.
Right.
And you want to add personality. Like, if you add personality to the AI, that adds a big gap to, like, they're really smart because they're doing these cool things or these fun things in the world. And then the player thinks they're smart. They're smarter than they are.
Right.
They're really just going through a series of choices in the world at that point. And I want to try to do as much as possible to make them feel amazing and smart, but you're not actually making a complex brain. You don't want them, you don't want them to be like another player. You want them to be a different challenge in the world. You don't want them to be like this really amazing player that's headshotting you all the time. That would get really frustrating. You want
that's interesting that people don't really want super realistic.
Right.
They think they do.
Yeah, they say they do, but they don't actually want that because it actually gets frustrating and not fun.
Yeah.
A good thing that I try to think about is you want AI or enemies in general to have a predictable behavior, predictable enough that you can manipulate their behavior.
Yeah.
And that's when it feels good.
Yeah, you want to feel like you're outsmarting
Right.
the AI, that they were smart enough to defeat you at some point, but then you're defeating them now, and you know how to get around them, and you're
predictable
outsmarting them.
sounds bad, but it's more about the player understanding the rule set that they have, the tools that they can manipulate the AI with.
It's a puzzle at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right,
And I think everybody likes video games with puzzles to understand how to beat that, and then you feel empowered.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I've got it. Oh no, or you tell your friend like, no, here's how we get the blah 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 guy. We have to do this and they do that.
Yeah. And as long as the AI kind of, like Chris was saying, as long as they kind of let you know what the reason for what they're doing is, that's where the perception of smartness comes in, because players can kind of decipher the rule set of the behavior
Right.
because of that.
That said, it is amazing, and one of my favorite things is AI in RPGs and the NPCs and their little job systems they have, because we fill in so many gaps, but they got to give us a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So just show us a little bit of that, like you said, personality in the AI, and then we'll fill in a ton. I mean, I do the same thing with the wolves and the bears in our game. You know, I'm like, oh, what was that bear thinking?
Yeah.
Well, it was just thinking about attacking whatever it could take over. But I've built a whole story about
Exactly. Yeah.
bears in general. Okay, Hayden on Discord asked some weapons questions. Will the weapons be upgradable? We've kind of already talked about that.
Yes, some of them.
Okay, good answer. And will they be unique and useful in certain situations? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, yes, they will have their own benefits and downsides. Yes, I guess that's what he's asking, right? And we don't want to. You never want to make a super powerful Swiss Army knife, because then there's no choice.
Right.
At all. So, yes, that's just good game design.
That's a great answer. And here's the silly question that keeps coming up all over social media. Can bears be used as weapons? Tameable. Come on. Already. Everybody.
I would say the first day I started work here, in my little notebook, I wrote down bear as pet, and that was like all I wrote. That was like one of the first things I wrote down. We haven't got. I can't say.
Can we get that notebook
out
out again?
But it was like the first thing that came into my mind. Like,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's say it like this then. Not with our current characters, but we're adding more.
Ooh, that was the best little.
I mean, as we release the game, we're gonna add more stuff later, right?
Yeah.
So
Swoopfly from Discord asks 3 questions. All right, we're gonna have these rapid fire ones, short answers.
okay.
How is the gunplay from the dev's perspective? Is the realism fun ratio good? Recoil aspect, bullet physics.
We have bullet physics. Gunplay is good. We're working on making the controllers better. We're gonna get there. I forget what else.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Next one. Will we be able to keep weapons after we survive and use them in the next match?
And not the crafted weapon per se, but you will have recipes.
Perfect. What is your top priority? ? Balancing weapons to get a solid roster, or more weapons for wider range of choice?
Currently, with our current lineup, balancing. As we go, adding more weapons, I guess.
You're doing great at these rapid fire. I need to do this more often. Yeah. And this one is for either of you. From Subtech117 on Twitter. It's actually for Wix. Clip size will be realistic or arcade?
I don't know what that means by arcade. Yeah,
Arcade.
realistic. Yeah,
Like a pistol will hold 20 rounds instead of
like Die
Right,
Hard,
a million.
like Die Hard, or
Yeah.
like 80s
Yeah.
movie. No,
Hard-boiled.
realistic. Because that's part of the upgrade path as well. Like we want to make some guns have bigger, and some guns have not so big.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason for picking one.
This is actually the very last one, which from Subterm on Discord. Will swapping between melee and ranged weapons be instant or near instant? I mean, I switch all the time. It's not instant, but I mean, you
Swapping
gotta
is really
swap.
swapping is really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a concern for people in games? The swapping speed?
I mean, in like competitive, twitchy first-person shooters,
Yeah.
swap speeds is a thing.
So
For our game,
empty a clip and immediately have your second weapon.
Right.
Right.
we have more weapon juggling in general, and I think the speed of switching is less concerning than actually managing your inventory and the amount of weapons that you have.
Right. And looking at the situation you're in.
Right, exactly.
And last one was, how do you tackle player safe spots for AI enemies? And I don't know what that means.
We have a system set up in our larger camps where there's safe areas where AI won't go to, where you can actually retreat and catch your breath, heal up if you need to, and get back to the fight.
Okay, so how will they work in scavengers then? That's the question.
You kind of have to search those areas out. You're gonna have to have some combat awareness of what the area you're fighting in, what looks like it would be good cover and good hiding spots. The player's very much more mobile than the AI are, so the player is kind of wily and should be able to get around and hide and jump up on places where the AI can't get to and get out of the line of fire if they need to.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember where these places are myself, and I play all the time. But you're saying there really is like areas that are pretty good for camping out for a little bit. Oh, okay. I'll have to look for them next time. Hey, we're done with the podcast. I want to thank Wiksten French for being here.
Thank you.
Hopefully it was a fun time for you all.
You'll be editing me out. So
you're pretty much out of the podcast. for people who listen,
thank you, Wix.
For people who listen to the edited version, you won't even know the parts that were cut.
Yeah.
But essentially, French was hitting the table a bunch. So
I can't
with your hand, because you can't.
When I talk, I smack the table with my hand. Apparently, more
Yeah.
than I realized
Such
until I do this.
salesman,
Yeah.
Or politician, maybe.
Yeah.
Elect Chris French.
We elect him for what?
I don't know.
Just
cause he'll do your AI for you, whatever you need.
President of the Outlander camp.
And also, Wix, thanks for being on this, because you're going back to Sweden, and it's nice to hang out with you for a little bit.
Yeah, it's been good.
But we'll maybe do a podcast over in Sweden. Might come visit.
Yeah. We can do that. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, that's it. Go to play_scavengers on Twitter. Follow our Discord. Join our Discord. Scavengersgame.com will have a reboot soon, so I'm working on that website redesign right now. And until then, we'll see you next time. Keep warm.
Keep warm.
Oh, yeah, we should all say that at the end.
Do we say it at the same time? Or
I don't know, but now that you said that, yes. 3, 2, 1. Keep warm. That sounds creepy.
That's
Okay, so